gentlemen, this brings us to the question time section of the day, and really it's a little bit of a chance to let off a bit of steam. And you've all had a fairly hard-working and intensive day, I know that, and a lot of issues have been kicking around. What we're going to try and do is take the questions that have come out of your workshops and get through as many of those as we can and use each one to frame a discussion. So we'll kick off each bit of the discussion with one of the questions from the workshops that were worked up in the workshops. We'll kick that around the panel, we'll then throw it open to the floor, but really the key to this is that you join in. Let me introduce our panel to you. On your far right, my left, is Fiona Mingus, who is an Edinburgh activist who speaks on behalf of the Edinburgh East Save Our Services campaign. Next to Fiona is Andy Whiteman, who's an author, researcher, land campaigner, self-described seeker after truth. We've all tried that one on. Best known for books like Who Owns Scotland and The Poor Have No Lawyers. On my right is Cammy Day, who represents 4th Ward in the Labour interest in Edinburgh City Council, where he leads on housing. Have I got that correct? Next to Cammy is Duncan Smith, who chairs the Unison branch at City of Edinburgh Council. And that's us for the moment. We're hoping that somebody else will join us in the course of the afternoon. But for now, that's your panel. Would you please welcome them? Let's kick off with a question that came out of the older persons workshop, from the Scottish Pensioners Forum. Older people are wrongly viewed as a burden on society, and the recent government service cuts have done nothing to diminish this view, with a 36% rise in energy prices, a 32% rise in food prices, and only a paltry 2.6% rise in pensions. What can be done to help, rather than demonising them for living past their sell-by date? Is that the attitude we have to pensioners?
That's a good question. There's some truth in this. But it's just like you can't categorise older people as just like older people because they're old. I mean, there's rich old people and there's poor old people. Two of the stresses here are food and energy. Now, I mean, it really is ridiculous. We're the 6th richest country in the world. We can't heat people's homes properly and eat enough. And part of the problem here is an intergenerational thing. I mean, today's younger people are the first generation in, I think, nearly 100 years that are going to grow up poorer than their parents, right? And then if you look at the work of the Intergenerational Foundation, I mean, there's been a massive transfer of wealth to older people from young people, mainly in the form of housing wealth. So, I mean, there's about a third of people in this country who are fairly reasonably well off. There's about a third who are kind of struggling in the middle, and there's a third who are pretty desperate at the bottom. And we've got the 6th greatest inequality in the developed world. So I think we need to see this not just about picking one sector of society like young people or old people or unemployed or whatever. We need to see it as much part of a bigger problem that's been growing for a long time, which is a massive disparity in wealth, a massive disparity in incomes, and an intergenerational transfer that's going on that is disproportionately benefiting some older people, not all older people. So I don't think that, and I showed a graph in our workshop that come from the Office of National Statistics that shows that the net property wealth of the top 1% in Britain is greater than the whole of the other 99% put together. Not just greater, it's 10 times greater. That's the levels of inequality. And when Tony Blair, they had a Cabinet Office report looking at inequality, which didn't give any publicity, but it was looking at intergenerational inequality now, going by 2020, that will be the same level as it was in Edwardian period. Mainly because the richer third have got things and assets to hand on, and the poor have nothing to hand on. So I think that's the debate. It's about inequality, and it's about intergenerational inequity. And within that, a lot of older people are suffering.
Thanks for that. Duncan Black, Peter Mandelson famously said that he was intensely relaxed about people getting filthy rich. Ed Miliband said about a year ago, we're no longer relaxed about that. It creates mistrust in society. We need to be more concerned with getting rid of inequalities. Are we seeing any sign of any policy following those good intentions, would you say?
No.
That was kind of the answer I tried to get.
I mean, the problem is with this one, as it seems, it comes mostly from the Tories and the establishment, but, other parties, Labour accepts this too to some extent, that, if you're not working and making profits, you're no longer of use to society. And that is, if you like, the basis of this, of looking at old people as some sort of problem, rather than as people who've worked for a long time, have contributed while they were in work, are contributing after they've left work. And people in that situation, which we will all come to, hopefully, is one where we should have, if you like, the last years of our lives in comfort and be able to contribute and being recognized as people who can contribute. I mean, part of the solution to this is our trade union fight as we had on November the 30th, 2.5 million trade unions coming out in support of better pensions, and not only for ourselves, but for those people who don't have pensions, which is a big issue. I mean, the tragedy is that November the 30th didn't develop into a much wider struggle, and perhaps we talked about this today. And that's what's the way, if you like, the solution to this. The solution to the stigmatism is action. And collectively looking at a way forward and seeing us fighting together rather than divisive policy of, well, people who are lucky are the ones that are young, people who are old, well, they're just a burden. It's not the way we should be looking at it. We're all part of the same community. We all contribute in different ways and will continue to contribute. We must see everyone in an equal light like that.
Sorry to just come in a little bit late. The traffic is abysmal, but I kind of picked up on the end of the question there. I mean, I think we're looking at this the wrong way round, right? We should be absolutely delighted and proud that people aren't dying young, that people are living longer. This is a triumph of our national health system, actually. This is a triumph, right? And there's something very wrong if we don't regard it as such. If we persist in seeing disabled people and older people as, well, the useless eaters, people who take but don't contribute, because that's the narrative that we're being given. A couple of years, 2009, I had the unfortunate experience of having to go to Tory Party conference. I wasn't there willingly, I will stress. I was there under coercion. But I listened to David Cameron's keynote address to that conference. And he said something that I agree with, and I have to say I remember it because it's the only thing I probably do agree with that he's ever said. And he said, birth shouldn't be destiny. And it's quite clear that birth is destiny for poor people, right? Let's be truthful. Forget all this stuff about social mobility, because austerity has stopped that in its tracks. If you are born poor now, the chances are you're going to die poor, right? And we've got a choice. If we don't want our children and our grandchildren to have the same kind of lives that our grandparents and great-grandparents did, then we have to stop this narrative now. And we have to absolutely stand up together. Don't fall for this young against old, worker against unemployed person, because all the time that we fall for that, David Cameron is laughing at us. He's just laughing at us, right? Duncan's absolutely right. The only way that we're going to do this, all of this, is by showing solidarity and supporting each other. And I don't mean just in a kind of, oh, let's get a little conference together. I mean in a real way, supporting each other. We've had a conference today on hard times for these times about Victorian Scotland. And I tell you that there is one kind of Victorian value that I think is worth absolutely re-establishing, and that's the kind of value of mutually supporting each other, because that's what we've lost, and that's what we need to get back.
Thanks for that.